Okay, perfect. Thanks, Judith. I appreciate that. Nothing worse, like I said, than being a couple minutes into a webinar and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, geez, nobody can see my screen or nobody's hearing me. That's always the worst. So, again, if you're just joining us, my name is Colleen DeLang. I teach for many of the associations across the state. Been a licensed realtor myself for 23 years. Makes me feel old when I say it like that. And I'm really here to just show you some time-saving tips and techniques when using Cloud CMA. I'm going to show you how to make a very cool, wowing presentation for your seller. I'm going to show you the new interactive feature within Cloud CMA. I'm going to show you some of their lead generation tools that they've built in, but really I'm going to help you make a great comparable market analysis so you can impress your sellers. But again, if you are listing some family members, or let's say you're not looking for the full-on wow, I'm going to show you where you can find a very streamlined report right in Paragon that will give you that same type of break down the numbers so that you can present it to maybe family or someone you already know you have the listing. So we're going to do a lot of shortcuts today. All right, so don't feel like you have to hold your questions till the end. Please feel free to jump in with any questions today. Go into the questions box, which is in GoToWebinar at the right-hand side of your screen. If you open up that GoToWebinar panel, kind of that red-orange arrow, you will find a box that says questions. Feel free to fire away with any questions that you have. Don't feel like you have to hold them all till the end, because I know as an agent, I usually forget what I was going to ask. So I'm going to turn off my very messy hair thanks to all of this rain, and we'll get actually into the CMA. All right, so what you're seeing right here, and again, I'm going to kind of teach this class backwards. What you're seeing right here is actually the finished product. And there's a couple different ways that you can view the finished product. You can actually do it in a live version, which is kind of interactive, where you have a little more control to change things. So if you are sitting with a seller, I'm going to show you that in just a couple of moments. But generally, if I'm meeting with a client, I am actually creating my CMA ahead. I'm usually saving it to my desktop, and then I'm presenting it in a PDF version that we can go through. Again, I'm going to show you the live version, which I like now a little bit better because I can make changes or add comps in on the fly. So let's take a look. So I'm going to try to open this up so you can see it a little bit more. We'll bring it down a little bit so you can see more of the whole page. So basically what you're looking at right here is my cover page. Now you can add a picture if you have a picture. If you don't add a picture, it will simply give you an overhead Google chat. I'm not a big fan of that. I like it to look like I really did my homework. So I'm also going to show you a place where you can go grab a public records photo. So of course, we don't want to steal anyone's photos from the MLS because those are copyrighted to the agent who took them. However, what you can do is you can actually use a public record photo for the front cover. I'll show you where to go and how to find that and how you can simply apply it to your cover shot. On my cover, I want to go ahead and also have my photo and branding and information about my company. So here's kind of a tip. If you use any of the modern themes, so there's a whole bunch of themes that you can choose from in Cloud CMA, but if you use any of the modern themes, the benefit is you will have your photo at the bottom. And of course, on each page at the bottom, as you can see here, it will have my contact information. So when going through this, so this is my comparative market analysis. And again, I'm showing you this backwards. I'm going to show you the finished product. And then if you like the finished product, I'm going to show you how to go through this step by step. This next page that you're looking at right now literally took me about 30 seconds to create. All I did is I went into Cloud CMA, and where it says my company page, I simply copied and pasted what was on my company's website. So literally it took me 30 seconds, but it's now in my template. And anytime I do a CMA, it automatically appears. Now, the cool thing about what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to go over everything. I'm going to go over all the bells and whistles, all of the details. But really, on average, my average CMA now takes me between 7 and 9 minutes. So this class is obviously going to take a lot longer, and you're thinking, geez, I could have written my comps out in the time this class is over. But that's really because I'm going to go through all the bells and whistles. Your average CMA, it might take you, 1 or 2 tries to get your template all set up, but your average CMA will take about 10 minutes. It's really not hard because your template is already there, created for you, and anytime you start a CMA, it's automatically applied for you. All right, so let's go to our next page. Great pre-written pages within Cloud CMA too. You don't have to use them. I kind of like the what is a CMA. If you're meeting with a first-time home buyer, you may kind of want to prep them of the process. So they have some pre-written marketing pieces that you can choose to use. There's a contact me page. You can actually include a QR code so that they can have it right on their phone with all of your contact information along with this report. But really, everybody on this call gets Cloud CMA. So what makes your Cloud CMA different than my Cloud CMA report? And the answer really is the extra level of detail and homework that you do when you're listing this property. So you're probably thinking, well, what does that mean? Well, I like to add in things like Paragon has some great stats. I like to add in market stats. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is the market stats that you see here. So when I went on this particular listing, just kind of show you really quickly, the inventory of homes was down 70.7%. I mean, I have to be honest, in my 23 years, I never would have thought we would see numbers like we did, over the last couple of years. But in 2021, we were looking at almost a 71% decrease in our inventory of homes for sale. So what does that mean? That means in 2020 in Bruce Township over by me, there were 41 homes on the market, only 12 in 2021. So obviously we see a strong case of supply and demand right here, right? We've got the average sales price going from $417 in 1 year going to $480. So when you're going on a listing appointment, having the statistics, and you can pull them from Paragon. If you're a market stats user, you can pull them from market stats. Having these different programs where you can create these things in 1 or 2 clicks, that is huge. That is extremely helpful when you're trying to show a seller what's going on in the market. Now, this, of course, is 2021, but now we're seeing some shifting in the market. And I have to be honest, I wrote an offer this weekend, and I was amazed. Amazed and bewildered at the same time. Wrote an offer, and it was on, the house was available on Saturday. They were having an open house on Sunday. They had 120 people through the open house. They received 9 offers, 4 of which were cash. Of course, I have a VA buyer, and so unfortunately mine wasn't accepted, but we're still seeing these amazing stories right now. And so being able to pull up what's going on in the marketplace and what our inventory looks like has never been more crucial, because each city that I'm looking at these days is different, and it's telling a different story. And so, of course, we have to be able to address that with the homeowner and educate them. So I'm a big fan of market stats. This is a program that I use, but you could do the same thing going into statistical reporting through Paragon. I'm just going to kind of briefly cover that so you can stay right where you are if you're following along. But in Paragon, just going to jump back. There is statistical reporting under your resources. So if you are in resource, now I use a different program. There is a program called Market Stats, which offers fast stats. I'm a big fan of that. That's something that, and you can purchase it on your own. Some MLSs provide it. UPAR, I don't think has this. They have cloud on that side. But I'm a big fan of the fast stats because if I'm looking for property information, and you can do the same thing through Paragon, I just quickly find it. So if I click on a city, I can say, you know what? Okay, in this city right now, the fast stats are a totally different story, right? We're up in our market inventory. So we're up 80%. We had 41 homes on the market last year, 74 on the market this year. You can see now we see the opposite effect in our average price. So there are some great tools in the MLS. Like I said, this is one I use. There's hundreds of them out there though. Let me show you another place that you can get great stats. And that again is right in Paragon under resources. Kind of think of resources as your toolbox. I kind of have really pointed that out every class we've done, that under your toolboxes is where you're going to find programs like Cloud CMA, where you're going to find showing time that you use, where you're going to find different things that you're using. Statistical reporting is where you can find graphs just like I showed you. You can go into MLS statistics. You can find out what's going on with a particular office. Maybe you want to show your how much your office listed in the last year, how much your office sold. You can do market price comparisons. So you can see in the MLS what were the stats for last year. So don't be afraid to go into statistical reporting and use those graphs to tell the homeowner what's actually going on in their marketplace. All right, so I'm going to go bounce back to our CMA example here. Oops, close that. But don't be afraid. What I'm saying is to pull up. And if you think something is helpful, if it talks about what's going on in an area, don't be afraid to pull that statistic up and put it in Cloud CMA. That's kind of the beauty about Cloud CMA is that you can bring in all different pieces into your CMA. I bring in the tax information. Where I am, a lot of the municipalities also record the water. If there's an unpaid water bill, that is attached to the property. So I bring that in. I'm going to show you some good examples of that. So don't be afraid to add things like market statistics to better educate that homeowner on what's going on. The next thing that I just mentioned is we use a lot of BS&A down here. Of course, you can use BS&A. You can use whatever. If you're going in through a website to pull county statistics or city statistics, don't be afraid to pull those, save them, and bring them into your Cloud CMA. Now, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do that when we go over creating our CMA, but I cannot tell you how many times I've been so thankful that I brought in either the old listing ticket. I had a client who was the buy side this time, but they purchased it. Yeah, actually, they were the buy side last time. They purchased it 3 years ago. And when I got the call from them that they were ready to sell it and move to Florida, I wanted to just pull up their CMA and put in all that detail. So I pulled up the old listing ticket of when they bought it. And I had that right in our CMA. So we could say, okay, this is what you paid. Remember when we walked through and, we went through item by item what you wanted to keep. But I have all of that information. I can go back to the listing ticket and pull those things in so that they can see it. You also want to grab that tax information. If there were things like assessments or things like if your municipality also records the water. I just had a property, there was a $700 outstanding water bill. So having it in here to discuss with the homeowner, when you're talking about a $100,000 property and they've got unpaid property taxes of $2,000 and a $700 water bill that hasn't been paid, that's definitely going to affect their net out. So having those things in here to go over with them, I think is huge. Also, where I am, I also grab the realist record, which is just another form of public records where I can show them, exactly here's where I got your lot lines, here's where I got your square footage, because many times they'll say, well, I think we have a little more square footage. Where did the square footage come from? I want to be able to have the record that I got the square footage from right here so we can actually address it and say, hey, this is what the municipality said about your property. Okay, so I find that very helpful. Here again, having things like if there are unpaid property taxes, I bring that in. I want to have that conversation when we're doing their net out. Then comparables, where the actual properties are. And you can choose, do you want a shorter comparable list, meaning do you want to stack them up all together? If you're going to print it, you might want to make your report shorter. I personally like this version. It's called the photo with max data because it brings in not only the remarks, but it will bring in all those interior photos. So if Mr. Schmagegi, your seller, says, well, Hank on the corner over here, does he have a finished basement? Because I have a finished basement. I think that should bring more. I want to be able to see that from the photos. So I am a big fan of bringing in all of those photos so that I can see that extra level of detail. So I can say, you know what? Actually, Hank does have an unfinished basement, not a finished basement. So I can bring that in, that extra level of detail on the house, as you can see here. So you can choose how you want the comps stacked up. Again, I don't want them all on one page. I kind of want them where we can kind of go through them. And I like a little bit more detail. I like this type of report because it also brings the comments from the MLS too, so we can go through those. I This is something that I actually created, and you don't have to use anything like this, but one of the questions I was getting asked every single time I would go on a listing appointment was, Colleen, you gonna put my home on Zillow? Colleen, is my home gonna be on Realtor.com? Where are you gonna advertise my home? Well, it kind of got to the point where it's always the third or fourth question that they ask when they're talking about how are you gonna sell my home. So what I did is I just created the sheet that you're seeing here. You don't have to do this, of course. If you want to reach out and borrow a sheet like this, you're more than welcome. I just made up a template. But basically, instead of them always asking me, where are you putting my house? I grabbed some of the top icons for real estate sites and I just addressed it here. So my particular broker actually syndicates to 400 different sites. And so instead of having to answer that each and every time, I created this page to put right in my template of my CMA. So every time I go to prepare this report, it's front and center. I don't have to remember to add it. It's just part of my template and I can address it even before they ask the question this way. All right, so then comparable property statistics. What was, the sold, what was the average price for the sold square footage? How many actives are you competing with? So it kind of just breaks it down. I really like the sold property analysis, especially over the last couple of years, because we've seen things in my area like that the listing actually closed for 110% of what the asking price was and that it sold in one day. So pretty cool stats. And quite honestly, it's been amazing. Now we're kind of seeing things kind of trend off a little bit in this area. I say that, but then, like I said, last weekend's open house with 120 people through, there's still a lot of buyers looking. So it's kind of an interesting market. So stay tuned. I also like this for first-time home buyers, this commission distribution sheet. Again, there's a lot of marketing pieces in here. You don't have to use them. You can choose which ones you like, which ones you don't. I like this because generally when I'm doing a net out at the kitchen table with that seller, they look at that, especially if they're a first time seller, they look at that number on the commission line and they go, oh my gosh, you must be like the wealthiest agent in the world charging this. They really don't understand how commission is distributed. They don't understand that there are two agents. They generally don't know that agents pay brokers to work there and that the brokers have responsibilities like keeping files for 7 years. So a lot of times this just reminds me to make sure I'm having that talk with them, explaining how commission works. So, and then there's a place for notes for them at the end. So as you can see, this is my finished product of my CMA. And what this really allows me to do is go over page by page what I'm gathering, what details I'm gathering about the home. But remember, what makes your CMA different than anyone else's is the level of detail that you go into. Like for instance, I do my seller's net sheet in zip form. I don't do it in Cloud CMA. There is a place in Cloud CMA that you can do it, but I really love zip form. So I generally do my seller's net in either Transaction Desk or zip form. They're the same company now. Lone Wolf owns them both. And I pull that into my CMA because I like that it auto calculates for me. I like that it's easier and more efficient. I find it a little clunkier doing it in Cloud CMA. So you can kind of customize what you want to bring in, and you can bring it in from all different places. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. So hopefully that's making sense for you. All right, so now I kind of showed you what the PDF version is going to look like. Next, what I'd like to do is I would like to kind of show you the new interactive version. This allows you to do more on the fly. So let's take a look at, let's use this one. The new interactive version gives you some options that I think are really helpful, especially if you haven't seen the property ahead of time. case in point, this house exactly. This is a good example with this home, so you can kind of get the idea. So I decided I was going to one step this listing. Now, I know a lot of experts say you should one step your listings, it saves you time. I'm generally a two stepper. I will go and make rapport with the homeowner and walk around and ask questions and, pet Fido and all that stuff. And then I go back, I do my homework, and then I present my homework. However, a lot of the experts say you should really do one step your listing. So, it saves you time and you're more efficient, and the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms are always going to be the same, and yada yada. So I decided I was going to try to one step this particular house that I'm actually showing you the example for. And from the outside of this house, as you can see, very, very cute. Little red brick. When I went there originally, every flower was planted in a row. I mean, you could tell she must have triple edged along the sidewalk, because it was just a perfect straight line. Everything was manicured. The garden, I don't know how she got her garden row. I try to garden every year. I never have had a garden with rows that straight. She just, from the outside, it was absolutely adorable. However, in my excitement to try what everybody says, one step your listings, I, of course, go there with my little file folder and my CMA all pre-printed. And I, of course, take off my shoes as I'm entering. And I kid you not, I stepped into blue, Grover blue at that, shag carpeting about this thick, and turned the corner, saw those big 70s wallflowers, the ones that stick on. And she literally had the Reynolds wrap foil bathroom. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. And I know they say it's coming back, but trust me, it ain't ever coming this far back. I mean, it was like walking into the Brady Bunch house in the 1970s. So unfortunately, now I have based my CMA on what I thought from the outside of the house. Clearly, the inside is going to need some updating. So here's me. I'm in the bathroom trying to rip out pages of my CMA with my suggested price. So that was really how the new CMA, the interactive CMA, was born. Is if you are going to one step your listing and you need a little more wiggle room, this is the program that you want to use. So you're not in the bathroom trying to, and back then, by the way, I had the spiral, the spiral CMA binders. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. So I'm in there trying to not mess the whole thing up and get that one page with my suggested price out. It's kind of a mess. But now there's much more professional ways to do that, where you can literally click one button when you're doing the interactive CMA and you can put in a different recommended price. And so now you really can one step your listings more efficiently than we could back then, for sure. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So now I'm going to show you the same CMA. So again, the same CMA, I created it the exact same way, but I'm going to show it to you in the interactive version. It's your choice. If you're more comfortable printing it off in the PDF version, it's awesome. If you just want to save it to your desktop in the PDF version, if that works best for you and you're most comfortable, that's great. And if I'm meeting with an older client, I still am that agent who will print it off and leave a copy behind. I want them to, feel comfortable. They like to look at it a little bit longer and, and kind of thumb through it. But nowadays, if I'm meeting with, just let's say, my typical client, I want to have it where I have a little more wiggle room as the agent to do everything on the fly. And so that's what I'm going to show you now. So this is the interactive version, and this is going to give you some features that you don't have in the traditional cloud. One of those features, and what actually got this out a lot quicker, because they were designing this for quite some time. However, what actually brought this to the forefront was the pandemic. So with the COVID pandemic, they realized that more agents needed a way to work remotely and to present their CMAs remotely. So if your client is in Florida on vacation, or you want to present this in a way, or they're not feeling well and you still want to present your CMA, at the bottom of your interactive CMA, you have different live stream offerings like Zoom. You have Skype, which is basically, most people know Microsoft Teams, Skype, Google Hangouts, or Zoom. Everybody's familiar with Zoom these days. However, there's also Screen, which is the maker of Slack. The idea is, that if you want to present this and go through it with your seller, that you now have these interactive ways to do that. You can also still add in custom pages. So you can add in things like your marketing plan, that page that I showed you on commission and how it's distributed. So all of that, you can access that right underneath that little Google stack up here that you see. But if you want to go screen by screen, you can just hit start presentation and you can go screen by screen, everything that you've set up. So again, what is a CMA? You can do one thing in here I haven't found in anything else, and that's you can upload a video resume. Have a girlfriend who did her video resume the other day. She was literally just standing in front of the sign. Her daughter grabbed her cell phone and started video taping her talking about how, she sold this house and she sold it for cash and they closed in 9 days. And that was her video resume. It wasn't anything fancy, but you can actually add a link that allows you to do a quick video resume, and you can actually add it to your interactive cloud CMA, and it can be part of your template. So every time you are going through a CMA with your client, they can see your video resume. It's just inside your template. The only thing is, don't make those too long. I have another friend who made a really long video. Nobody really wants to see that. They're anxious. They want to know, what is their home going to sell for? How are you going to get it sold? How long is it going to be? That's obviously what they're looking at. One of the other things I really like about the new interactive version is it takes subject property, as you can see over here, but it highlights differences. A lot of times you need to tell them why a property sold for much more or much less. Maybe it had a larger lot. Maybe it's the only house in the neighborhood that doesn't have a garage and everything else is attached. So you need to maybe point that out as why they may have gotten less for that home. So it labels what was the most expensive comp. It'll label what's the closest comp. But basically, as you can see here, it's showing that there is an additional 2-car garage here. Over here, it's showing me that the lot size is a little bit larger, and hopefully you can see that right through GoToWebinar too. I know it's kind of light. Shows that there's an additional bathroom here. If there's an additional bedroom, that will be highlighted. So the idea is I can go through this with the homeowner and I can point out those differences. So here I can see this one was closest to you. And then I can see this one had a little bit larger lot. This one had an additional bath. So it highlights those differences. But my favorite feature is, and we've all been there, right? We're sitting with the seller, and their seller inevitably says to you, okay, but Joe Schmagegi on the corner, he just closed yesterday and he got 190,000, and you're telling me I'm worth 170,000. Well, could be a couple things, right? You, the agent, could have prepared this ahead of time, maybe 3 days ago. And if you just closed yesterday, probably don't have that comp in here to show. Could be other things too. Let's face it, if Joe Schmagegi's friend has a colonial and he's in a ranch, we're generally going to try to find other ranches or the closest comp we can to him. So in this case, it could be that they had 5 bedrooms and he has 3. There could be reasons you didn't actually select that comp as the agent. But they assume when you're sitting at the table, you know every house that's ever been built in existence of all time, right? So they're going to want to know, why don't you have Joe's comp in here? That's where the new MLS interactive map becomes very, very helpful, because there's probably a really good reason you don't have it in there. Again, that you've either done it ahead of time or that it really didn't qualify as being a valid comp. That's most of the time, right? So how do we address that with the seller when we're sitting there? So, and I try to give you as many examples as I can, so you can kind of see what these different tools are used for. But if we're sitting with Mr. Schmagegi and he says, well, Joe over there, I see the comps you've selected, but Joe over on the corner over there, he just got 150,000. I think we should use his comp. No problem. I'm going to zoom in on this map, and I'm going to be able to see all of the comparables. So I can say, okay, well, he's on the corner of Bowling Green. Well, let's take a look at his property. Oh, yeah, he's a brick ranch with a lot less square footage than you had. Or maybe he's a colonial, and that's why I didn't choose him. But I can see that on the fly, right? I can literally click on that map dot, and I can say, well, actually, we're not going to include that comp for whatever reason. It's a 2-story If we want to include that comp, let me grab that's a lease one. So let me grab a better one. Let's say we do want to include this comp. We did find that it's a good comparable and it closed yesterday. We did our CMA 3 days ago. I can say, okay, let's include that. Let's add that in. We're going to hit that toggle. Now, when we go back to our comparables, our Hillsdale is automatically going to be added for us. So we've now added another comparable into the mix right here, and I now can adjust those numbers on the fly. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. That interactive map allows you to do a little, if you've gotten to this point and you want to remove, let's say we don't want to use Hillsdale, we can always remove it, and it's going to adjust our numbers accordingly. So as you can see, this is a nice, easy to read breakdown for our sellers. 28 days on the market, $210 a square foot. Here's our average and our median, our highest and our lowest comp, but it allows me to present it in a really interactive way so that if I need to make a change, I can do that. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. If you like that, you're probably thinking, okay, Colleen, well, how did you do that? So we're going to go there next. I'm going to show you exactly step by step how to build a CMA. However, it doesn't matter whether you want to show it in the interactive version or that PDF version. You create the CMA the exact same way. The only difference is really in how you want to present it to the seller. So you create it the exact same way. I'm going to walk you through that next. It's really just how do you want to present that information to your seller? Do you want it in that interactive version? Or maybe you're more comfortable just printing off your report or saving it to your desktop. You can do that as well. All right. Next, when preparing for your CMA, what I like to do is I like to always start with the tax records. And I'm going to show you a couple little tips and tricks that I use. I know up where you are, the geography is very different. You use different programs. I know when I was talking to a couple people up there, BS&A is not as prevalent, but I do know that you have a lot of municipality or area websites that you can get the same information from. But one of the things I was always challenged with is I don't like the Google overhead shots. I don't know. I mean, it's great, but it doesn't look like you did any homework on the house. And I've always been that, I'm kind of like the Girl Scout. I like to do all my homework on the house. I remember back in the day when, 23 years ago, when we used to have to buy field sheets. I don't know if anybody even calls them field sheets or if they were called field sheets up there, but basically what would happen is we didn't have any municipality records online. So 23 years ago, you would drive over to a municipality, whoever held the records, and you would buy a field sheet for a couple dollars. They'd make you a copy, and I had this paper copy. But I remember there were some very small municipalities, like over here up where I live, there's this little township of Ray, and it's very, very small. And I remember going on one of my very first listing appointments and finding out that the Ray didn't have an actual office. It was in the bottom of someone's home in their basement, and they would make you a photostatic copy in the basement. So I remember, and they were open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from like 9 in the morning to 11, and that was it. So if you needed a field sheet, you were driving to somebody's house you didn't know. And I remember getting there, I kid you not, because it was at someone's house, and the gentleman answered the door. He had a bathrobe, I mean, he had a t-shirt and stuff on, but he has bathrobe on. He's like, oh, just follow me into the basement and I'll make you that copy. And I'm like, okay, this does not seem safe. So we've come a long way by getting municipality records online now, and it's making it much more convenient. So I know you guys use different sites. I'm aware of that, but the same concept will apply. So hopefully you can follow along with me. One of the things when you're doing a CMA and you don't have a front photo, I'll just kind of show you what it looks like. I'm just not a fan of it. I think it looks kind of lazy, to be totally honest. Find a good example of one. So we will use this one. I think would be a good example. So if you have not gone and grabbed a photo from a public records site, that's a good word to use. It basically does that ugly Google overhead shot, and I don't think it looks very professional. It just kind of looks like someone hurried up and threw it together, and it just doesn't look that nice. So let me see if this is a good one to show. Maybe we've all seen it. It just doesn't really show. Okay, here's a good example of one. This really doesn't do anything for the home, right? It's just looking down as an overhead shot. So because we don't want to take someone's photo from the MLS, because copyright lawsuits right now are rampant for MLSs. It's really crazy. I don't know if you know this, but whoever actually clicks the shutter of a camera is the actual copyright owner. Therefore, if you're using something in the MLS that a photographer has taken or another agent has taken, you could have some copyright issues. So you don't want to do that. But what I have found very helpful is I go to the municipality record and they always have a picture of the house, almost always. Now, I've never tried this up where you guys are. And so I know that it, again, with the geography and things, sometimes it is a little different up there, but I'm just going to kind of show you what I do. And then I'm sure on your public record information that there's probably something very similar. I will also show you a backup in RPR so that you can take a look at that. And that's another great resource for getting a photo. But what I want to show you now is the way that you can go into a municipality record, and in my case we use BSNA where I am, and we've deep linked it so that I click on a button, it takes me to that municipality record, and I now have an image of the home to use. I'm not taking someone else's picture, I'm using an actual public record photo. So here would be my first recommendation. Check your BSNA or check whatever your online services up there that you access your tax records and your municipality information. And then usually it will have either a photo or it will have sometimes it's a floor plan or sometimes it's even a survey there. And what I do is I generally will right click on it and I will save that public record image. So I'm just going to put this on my desktop here just to kind of show you some quick examples. So I'm going to say I'm going to save this just to my desktop just for a quick example. So we'll call this example so I can find it. All right. The other thing that I do, and I think is really important, especially now, and I just had a situation where I met with a homeowner. She called me to list her condo. And when I met with her and I got the details, she had actually inherited the condo from mom. When I went into the tax information, unfortunately, there was close to between $7,000 and $9,000, I think it was, in taxes that were not paid. The condo was only worth, I think, $130,000, so that was a lot of money. And so what I did is I went to the tax information. I'm doing my homework and I see all these unpaid property taxes, right? So I print this off, and generally right at the top of your BSNA or city municipality websites, there'll be a print option. Printed it to a PDF and I saved it so that I could pull that in. And the great news is, one, as I'm going through my CMA, I don't forget to address it because I've got it saved. I'm putting it right on my desktop again. So we'll call this example 2. Oops. Sorry, I got a new computer and I'm not quite used to the mouse just yet. So every once in a while, you'll kind of see me hesitate, but we'll call this example 2. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right. So another thing is if there is water, sometimes in some of the municipalities, they'll have a tab that's water, or they'll have a foreclosure information tab. Always save those as PDFs, and I pull those into my cloud CMA. So back to my particular story on the condo. When I actually went through my CMA with her, she again, had verified, yeah, that was my mom. And I said, well, this is a non-homesteaded. Do you own another property here in Michigan? And she said, no, whenever it got transferred, I wasn't told to do anything. And I said, well, let's call the city. So we ended up calling the city of Clinton Township. Sure enough, they rebated her all of that. because, she wasn't aware that she needed to homestead the property. She just inherited it from her mother. And so she was able to save a good amount of those taxes she didn't have to pay back. So those are those cases where just by having them in your CMA and addressing them with the client, you find out enough information. We actually went down to the city together. She was so relieved. I made a client for life. And she was so relieved that she didn't owe that much in taxes. So she actually got a bit more back for the condo. So it worked out really well. The point of the story is just go to that municipality record, and whatever you're finding, bring that into cloud, because sometimes there's discrepancies and you want to address them. But really, when I'm doing a CMA, this is always where I start, because I can find out when it was built, how many bathrooms, what's the square footage, what's the acreage, what's the lot size, how many baths, does it have a basement is generally in here, does it have a garage, what is it, a full basement? A lot of those things are right here, as well as the tax information. So if I click on property information, I know yours is a little bit different up there, but I'm sure it probably follows something very similar. It's going to show you what the zoning is. It's going to show you, a lot of times like this was a quitclaim deed. It'll show you if the property went into foreclosure. It'll show you above grade square footage. It'll show you the foundation type and size. So this is where I'm starting. I'm always starting here so I can start putting the details together of what I'm looking for when it comes to comps. All right. So I know this isn't by you, but I'm going to use it just because it's a great example, and it's got a couple different things I like to use. When you're doing your CMA, I also like to go back and see if that property's ever been listed. So here's a little tip too. If you go back in and type in that address, I can see that this property has actually been listed and closed 3 times. Now, if it was active, it would be right up here at the top. If it was pending, I would see it up here at the top. But really, I'm looking to find out the history of this property. So I want to click on listings 3 because it's showing me all 3 closed records. And now I can see when it was listed, what the price it was listed for, what it closed for. And if you see them in red, you'll know that's a property you closed. Okay, so anything that's listed in red, I know is going to be a property that I closed very quickly too. So this allows me, again, to click on these listing tickets, because especially if you sold them that property and now they're calling you to list it, you want to have all that detail in here so that when you're going through your CMA, you can show them all of this. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. So now we've started to gather our details on the house. We know how many bedrooms, we know how many bathrooms, we know it has a garage, we know it has a basement. Now we want to take all of that and input that into our search to find like comparables. I'm going to show you a couple of appraiser tricks too that you're going to want to know when you're trying to find comparables. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to search, because I'm obviously searching for comps. And you're going to search for whatever type of comps. If you're listing vacant land, well, that's the kind of comps you're going to look for, right? In this case, we're going to search for single family or residential comps. If you're getting familiar, I think most everybody on this call I kind of recognize from at least one webinar. So if you're getting familiar with Paragon, remember you can start typing into a field. But if you don't know what goes on a particular field, you can always click that magnifying glass and it will give you what it's looking for. So when it's asking for type, well, I could start typing in residential if I knew that. But if you don't be afraid to click on that magnifying glass to the right and pick the option you're looking for. My fields also may be in a different order than yours. If you've taken the Customizing Paragon or the Paragon Tips and Tricks class, we show you how to add fields you'll like, how to remove the fields that you never use so that you don't have to always keep scrolling past them, and how to put them in the order that you like. So my order may be slightly different than you see. All right, so from here, I want to change this from all, meaning I don't want leases. I just want to see what's for sale. And of course, when you're doing a CMA, the most important number is our closed number. What did the property close for? However, I'm a big Floyd Wickman fan. I don't know if anybody on the call actually knows who Floyd Wickman is. He was a big real estate coach, and he was really funny, kind of similar to Dave Ramsey, I guess, today. But he's always just very funny and very practical when it came to real estate. And he started a class called Sweat Hogs. And matter of fact, it was kind of embarrassing if you didn't do your homework. You had to wear this dunce hat, and and if you missed three, you were out and you lost your $4,000 for the program. It was like kind of a strict class. But he always would say, if you're going to sit with a seller, you better know what's active next to that seller and what's pending, because they do. And you never want them to know more information than you do. Also, as the market begins to change, you may want to consider helping them not overprice their home. Because let's face it, sellers up to now have been hearing, oh, we're getting record amounts of offers. They're all getting 9 offers over asking, and cash sales are. So now we're going to have to start obviously setting it up for the sellers that that's not every time. It still happens occasionally, but it might not be as prevalent, right? So if you know they're going to really overprice their listing because they've been listening to this for years now, you may even want to include one really overpriced expired. This was kind of an old Floyd Wickman trick. If you're talking to him on the phone, after doing your CMA that the average comp is about 300,000 and they want to try 400. Well, having an expired that has been on the market for maybe 200-300 days and has had 5 price adjustments that you can pull out of your bag of tricks and say, I know, Mr. Schmigegi, that you think that you want to overprice if I'm this much, but Link on the corner, well, he thought the same thing. And look, he's been on the market 300 days now, and he's had 5 price changes, and the listing has really gone stale. Having something like that that you can pull out of your bag of tricks when you need it is always very helpful. But we'll just kind of keep it basic. We're going to do closed, active, and pending. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate these stupid MLS calendars. You got to click, and then you got to go 6 months back. Easier way. Really, most appraisers in this market are going 6 months back. Use this drop-down date range. Click on 6 months back. Much, much easier than having to do 10 clicks into these calendars. I'm going to go ahead and jump down a little bit. Obviously, if we are listing a brick ranch, I really want to compare that to other brick ranches, unless, of course, it's in an area where I can't find any comparables. In this case, I'm going to do a 1-story. I'm going to say that this home does have a basement, that it is a 3-bedroom home. I'm going to go 3 to 3. It has a 1.5 car, or I'm sorry, a 1.5 bath. So we are going to do, let's do 1 to 2 here. And down here, scroll down a little further. I know that it has a 2-car, and of course you could add in more details like 2-car attached garage. Attached, of course, would be in features. I generally don't like to use features unless I have way too many comps, because right now there's just not enough inventory to add in too much detail. So I'm just going to say that we're looking for a 2-car garage. What about square footage? So now, and this may be a little bit different where you are. And again, these are kind of the basics. If you're out in a really rural area, even just north of me, I live kind of on the border of Richmond and St. Clair. So St. Clair is very rural. And I always start with these basic parameters. But a lot of times, if I am listing, a farmhouse, there might not be a like property within 2 or 3 miles. I may have to kind of open my circle up. And I would imagine up where you guys are, you'd have to open it up even further. Now, of course, there are some things you would probably use, like if it's on the Great Lake, that would probably be something that would be almost required to find a comparable on the Great Lake, right? So the idea is I don't generally like to use features unless I have to, but there are some rules that you can start off with, and you can kind of open them up if you can't find enough comps. Really, what you're searching for is generally between 3 and 5 closed comps, so you can see what the total is. What's the average type of financing? How long did it take? That's really what we're looking for. In this area where we're doing our example, the appraisers all tell me that they use a 20% square footage rule. And I think that's pretty prevalent, but I know up where you guys are, you have, different geography and a lot of area, and a lot of rural area. So sometimes you might have to play with us a little bit. But this home, when we went into the BS&A records, was 1,361 square feet. Okay. So when I'm doing the 20% square footage rule, I'm basically taking that 1,361 and I'm figuring out what 20% of that would be. So let me grab my calculator and I'll get better numbers here. So 1,361 times, I wish I was better at math and could figure that out quicker for you. But anyway, it works out to be 272. So if I am looking to find out what's my top of my square footage range, I'm basically taking that 272 and adding the 1,361 to it, and it comes out to be about 1,600 square feet on the top. Now I take that 1,361 minus the 272, so I'm just taking that off the bottom. So really, I'm looking for around 1,100 to 1,600 square feet. Okay, and that's kind of just in the ballpark. Now I've got the basics in, but as you can see up here, holy cow, we got 5,154 comps. We would be there for several days presenting the CMA because, of course, we didn't put in the biggest and most important feature, and that's location, location, location. So we've got the criteria in, but now how do we do what an appraiser is going to do? How do we stay within 1 mile of that subject property easily? So if you go to your search by map field, by the way, this is, I got to be honest, the way I search 90% of the time now. But some people find it very intimidating. So let's take a look at it. I think once you do it a couple times, you'll go, oh my gosh, that lady with the fuzzy hair totally makes sense. So when your map initially opens, it opens up to where your office is located. Because of course, that's what UPAR knows about you, right? They know what office you work at, and they assume you're probably working somewhere around that office. You can change this in your preferences. So it could be your house. It could be, working out of someplace different. You can put in whatever address you want. I don't know about you, but I find when I start trying to use my fingers to like move the map around on my touch screen, all of a sudden I'm looking at all the continents and I'm in like Africa and Asia and I'm trying to backspace and it just makes me crazy. So here's a little tip. When you are listing a property, go up to this find box. So if I am listing this subject property of 41539 Wessel Drive, here's a tip. Don't put in the drives, don't put in the ways, the boulevards, the courts, the places, the avenues, leave all that off. This uses Google Maps. With Google, less is always best. What you do want to put in is the route street address. So even though this is Wessel Drive, putting in 41539 Wessel, comma, the city. So we're going to use our Sterling Heights. So if you're in Marquette, you're going to put in the route street address, comma, Marquette. And you're always going to do this in 2 steps. This is the most common call I think I get when it comes to map searching. You always want to find this address first. You're going to click on the magnifying glass and you're always going to find the subject property first. Then you're going to decide on your radius. So I'm going to say in that area, I know an appraiser is going to stay within 1 mile of that subject property. So I've got my subject property here. I've got my comps starting to float in, right? But let's say that we did our 1 mile radius and we're in a more rural area and we didn't come up with any comps. Well, could go in and now do a 2 mile radius or a 1.75 or 1.25, whatever it happens to be. But what if go too large or too small? What if you want to kind of just expand that map? Let's say you just kind of want to pull it open a little bit more to see if anything else pops in. Here's a little trick. If you go up to this edit here at the top and you click into the shape you've created, so I click into the radius box, it creates these points. And these points literally allow you to grab your radius and make it a little larger. So and I'm just going to kind of shrink this a little so you can see it. If I'm looking to add a couple of comps, but I don't want to go too big or too small, can grab these points, which, and as you can see, there's a point on each side, and I can make it just slightly larger or slightly smaller. Now I've got those additional comps showing up without having to go 3 miles or 4 miles. I can just pull it open a little bit at a time and see exactly where that additional comp is without going too far. Again, you could go up and put the exact in 1.25 or 1.50, 1.75, whatever you want it to be, and hit search radius, and it would make it that large. But I like this because it allows me to kind of pull it open and shrink it as I need to. Another key, so I'm going to go back in, I'm going to click on that and close up that circle. Another thing that I really struggled with, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, is that sometimes you have waterfront areas, especially where you guys are. I mean, let's face it, my father used to have some property right on the cliffs of Lake Superior, right off of Highway 1 up by Eagle River. It was beautiful. He also, unfortunately, got remarried for the 6th time, and she did not care for it. So he no longer has that property. But anyway, I loved summers up there. They were spectacular. But let's face it, if you are on Lake Superior, that's going to definitely change the numbers of what that house is going to cost, right? If you have a home that's a ways off of Lake Superior, well, it's probably, in most cases, going to be worth a lot less than those beautiful homes that are on Lake Superior. So let's pretend for a moment that this is Lake Superior. I know it's nothing gorgeous like that. It just happens to be a little Clinton River, but I'm just using it for an example today. Let's pretend that Cindy has listed these beautiful $1 million waterfront properties right on Lake Superior. But now she's getting ready to list this traditional brick home, a mile away from Lake Superior. If she goes in and she includes all of these comps, these 3 and these 2 and these 2, she's now got to deselect all of those because let's face it, it's going to really screw up her CMA numbers, right? So what if I told you you could actually exclude those so that you don't have all that extra work? So let me kind of show you what I mean. If I want to remove the $1 million waterfront listings that Cindy has so that my numbers are more accurate to the home I'm actually listing, I can go to the draw button. I can pick the shape. I personally like the polygon. I think it's the easiest to work with. So when you go to draw and you click on the shape, you'll see it kind of turns into a plus. So I'm going to pretend that this Clinton River is Lake Superior. And I do not want any of these beautiful Lake Superior homes to change what my real numbers of my CMA would be. And by the way, I'm just literally clicking my mouse to start and stop exactly where I want to outline the waterfront. So I'm just making that, and then I'm going to end where I started. And I know what you're probably thinking, lady with the fuzzy hair, they're still there. But what I'm trying to show you is you can actually create a shape on a shape. But there's one last detail. You're going to go over to here and where it says include, you're going to simply click exclude. Now what we've done is we've now excluded those particular $1 million waterfront properties, so they are not going to screw up our CMA numbers. This is also helpful on the buy side. If you're working with a buyer and there's, let's say that he's looking in a 10-mile radius, but there's this one little area of the city he doesn't really care for, you could actually exclude that. So especially if you're using things like the Collab Center, which automatically sends your buyer those new listings, I don't want to send him listings in an area he might not like. So I can actually exclude a particular area and he's not going to get listings within that shape. Okay, you can, by the way, have up to 10 shapes on your map too. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. I'm trying to give you some good examples so it can help you kind of see what these different tools are useful for. Because you now have data sharing and so much more data than you did previously, if you are listing a house, let's say in the Lower Peninsula down a little ways, you don't want to drive all the way over there. You kind of want to get a bird's eye view of what that neighborhood looks like or that property. Don't be afraid to use the little yellow man over here to the right, this little yellow Google guy. Just simply drag them in front of the property. So I'm going to go in front of my subject property right over here on Bernard. I'm going to let them go, and I literally can walk down the street and I can see the property to the left and the property to the right. If I want a 360 view, and here's what I really love. If you're listing this house and I had put in that house as the address in my find box, do you see where it actually placed the pin of this is the house that we're going to be listing? I can see the neighbor to the right. I can see the neighbor to the left. And I can do a bird's eye view without having to spend a small fortune in gas and drive there ahead of time. So keep in mind, you can use that little Google man. Again, we all see him, but very few of us really have ever used him. At least I hadn't for many years. Simply grab them, drop them in front of the neighborhood. It'll tell you exactly where you're about to drop them. Let go, and then again, you can do a tour of the properties to the left. It actually labels the streets for you, and I find that very helpful. Your buyers, if you're using the Collab Center, they can see that too. So they can actually tour a neighborhood without even leaving their phone or their computer. All right, some other helpful tips. Maybe you are trying to do comps where if a particular home needed flood insurance, if you have, if your client says, yeah, I have to have flood insurance here, and you have a lot of comps and you want to dwindle those down, right here in a nutshell, these layers that you can apply. So you can apply parcel lines. You can also apply floodplains. So if you have a client who says, you know what, I don't want to have to pay flood insurance, you can see what the FEMA maps say as far as what the rating would be. And you can also zoom in a little. And this is the hardest part really of using these is you kind of have to zoom in and out. You can see how that falls into the floodplain. So I can see that this is a 500-year floodplain. Maybe this is one I want to order an elevation cert on if we're thinking of purchasing that. So the idea is you can quickly add those layers that give you that extra detail. Or sometimes you want to see what do the lots look like. If you're listing a home with a larger lot and you want to explain why that's going to bring them more value, then applying something like maybe the parcel lines. So you can show them, I'll zoom in a little bit, you have a larger lot than most. So especially if you've got a corner lot or something like this. The cool thing about that is even if the property is not listed, if you click into the lot, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. If you click into the lot, even though it's not listed, you can generally see the lot lines. You can see a photo of the home over here, kind of just, again, using that Google map. But if I zoom in, I can also see that this lot is 120 by 60. I can also see the area of the lot. So when I'm looking at my comps and I'm trying to figure out why did this one close for more or less, this is another great place to see that right from your map. All right, so hopefully all those examples made sense. Sorry to be so long-winded about it, but every once in a while we get those really tough homes to get comps on, and these little tips will really help so that you don't have more comps or less comps than you actually wanted. And then also many times I get all the way to this point and I'm doing really great on my CMA, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I got all these lease comps, or I forgot to add a particular something and I have too many comps. You can always go back to your criteria tab. It stays open now. It didn't used to do that, and it used to drive me bananas because I would hit the back button and it would close you out. And oh my gosh, I would be so frustrated at myself over and over. Remember, you can hit the criteria. You can add in more or less criteria. You can jump back to your map search. So don't feel like if you forgot to add something or now you have too many comps, remember, you can always jump backward and forward. Okay. So let's take a look at our results. I'm going to hit run search. We've got our results. Now, I have a little OCD I've mentioned before, and I hate the way it's all jumbled here. So I kind of like to see my actives with my actives, my closed with my closed, because I'm really looking for between 3 and 5 closed comps. So I kind of like to separate them that way. Other things that I would add is I would add the year built. This home happened to be built in, I think it was 78 when we saw it. So really 1987 is probably not going to be a good comp when really my home was built much earlier, or new construction, for example, would not be a good comp. If there's a field like that that you want to look at, don't be afraid to adjust where your fields are. So I want to be able to see when the year built without always having to scroll over to the right. You'll notice I've also added some agent names here. In doing this 23 years in the same area, I have had some great experiences with agents that I would love to work with again. So when I get my search results, especially if they're active listings, if I have 10 active listings that I'm getting ready to show, guess what? I want to know who listed them right on my page here with the results because those agents I've had great experiences, I'm definitely showing their houses first. The agents that I kicked myself for even accepting their offer, I'm showing them last. So the idea is by adding fields like agent name to your results, you can see very quickly when you're getting ready to schedule those appointments, maybe who you want to put up at the top. Right, for the sake of time, I would now be going through these and I would be adding even more criteria because I've got 17, which is too many. So I'm going to pretend that I added a little bit more criteria just for the sake of time. Bear with me. Here it does give you kind of a mini breakdown of what the numbers are going to be. But I'm going to say, for the sake of time, I'm just going to run and grab 5 closed comps. We'll hopefully get pretty close here. 1460, it's pretty close to my 1361. So I'm going to just kind of go through here and I'm going to grab my 2 pending. Now with my OCD, I have to be honest, I hate, like, that is like garbage to me because I got to scroll down to see everything. It's not on the same page. Don't be afraid to hit this checked button. Now you can see everything you've selected and none of the garbage you didn't want. Helps me be a little more focused on what to do with these. The next thing is, before I go into the really cool features of cloud, let's say for a minute that Cindy is, and I don't even know if Cindy has a brother, but I'm going to say that Cindy has a brother, and her brother called and said, you know what, Cindy, could you just come over and let's get my house listed today? Well, in this case, Cindy doesn't really need the full-on fancy wow presentation of cloud, right? It's her brother. He loves her. He's already going to list with her. So therefore, she doesn't need the whole go through every page presentation, right? She just needs to show him, here's some comps, here's what it's going to sell for. So if Cindy's listing her brother's house and doesn't want to go through the whole cloud CMA process, she could simply go to the reports. And I apologize if your GoToWebinar panel is over this. I apologize. It's the reports button. It's green. It's kind of right here if you can see my mouse going to it. Once you click on that, if you scroll down just a little bit, you will find a CMA folder. In your CMA folder, as you see here, there is something called the Quick View. The Quick View is designed to just do that, to show you those houses stacked up against each other. By the way, you can even add fields. So let's say acreage isn't here, but you want to add acreage or price per square foot or whatever you want to add. That most of those are already there. But if there's a field that's really important or unique to that house, like finished basement, something like that, you can actually add that field in by simply going to your customize, and you can add those additional fields in. So I've got my quick view. So Cindy's just showing her brother these houses. And then let's say, you know what, before Cindy gets there, she doesn't even want the quick view. She just wants the breakdown of the number she's going to give. She's just going to tell her brother what he's going to list it for. She's not even going to show him anything. She's just going to show up and say, here's what we're going to list it for. So in that case, you can go back to reports, that same folder for CMAs, but this time you're going to do a summary. That will actually break down the properties that you selected, pending versus closed. It'll show you the average asking price. It'll show you the average sold price, the average square foot, price per square foot. So she can see all of that herself, how long it's taking, average 3 bedrooms, 1 to 2 baths. She can see all of that in this breakdown. So remember, if you don't need the whole bells and whistles, wow, this is a great option. But if you're looking for the whole bells and whistles, which I usually am, now we want to use the easy button to take all of those great comps that we've just selected and put them in that really cool template or report in Cloud CMA. So when I say easy button, the tech people, especially the people who made Paragon, in my opinion, are really good at hiding all the cool stuff. they hide it in a way we would never look for it. So let me show you where your easy button is. It's actually under this plugin or actions button. So I've selected the comps that I want to use. I'm going to hit my actions button and I'm going to say, okay, I want to load these into my CMA. Now be careful here. There's two cloud CMAs. One is if you're showing buyers houses and you want to put a little buyer tour together. We're going to look at that in our afternoon cloud CMA class. But in this case, we just want to do a traditional CMA. So we're going to click on Cloud CMA, and that launches us right into the cloud program. Down below, you're going to notice all of the listings are here. Now, it doesn't matter if they came from UPAR or My Real Source, or they came from Bay County, or they came from, it doesn't matter where the listings came from through the data share. They're still in here for you, and it's going to pull all those over. All you have to do on this page is you're going to put in the name of the client that you're going to prepare it for, and then you're going to type in the address so it can find the tax records for you. So I'm going to say this is 41539 Wessel. I start typing that. As soon as I click that, you can see it's now populating the tax information. If you need to change something, you can certainly do that. You can override it, but it's a really easy way of pulling that tax information in without having to re-enter your subject property details. All right, remember where I said that public record photo looks a whole lot better than the overhead shot? Well, this is where you can add it. You can actually click on Add My Cover Photo, and I'm just going to type in my example. As we can see, we've got our example here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to insert that. And as you can see, it's kind of got this ugly date down here at the bottom, so I really want to crop that out. I don't want that ugly date on my cover. So I'm actually going to crop that date out, hit the crop button, and now I have a beautiful cover shot instead of that ugly Google overhead dot map. I just really don't like that. So the next thing I want to do is I'm literally just following these three tabs, which is the criteria, which we just entered, the listings. It's going to give you one more chance to take a look at the listings in cloud, and then applying your template. This last one, you don't even have to do. It's kind of like your save, if you will. Anytime you make a change, you want to think of this publish as like your save button. All right, so let's walk through it. So we've brought over the data from Paragon. Congratulations. That's really the hardest part. The rest is going to walk you through this user-friendly wizard, and it's just going to take you from screen to screen so that when your presentation is done, you've got all the bells and whistles in front of you. So this second tab, this listings tab, is just one more view for you, the agent, to kind of take a look and make sure, am I in the right ballpark? You know, are these the comps that I wanted to add? If there's one that you're looking at and you're like, geez, this 285 was just way too high, I'm not going to add that. I can deselect it right here without starting over. If you want more details, should I add this 281? Let me go back in and let's look at these photos. Is it really a like comparable? You could even put notes in here. Now, I remember back in the day, I used to put sticky tabs, you know, on the listing tickets, like this one had no central air, this one had no basement, this one, and to try to justify why there was either more or less value for that home. So keep in mind, you can actually do the same thing. You can put in notes right here and put in, you know, this home was recently, the kitchen was recently remodeled, whatever it happens to be. You can do that right from here. All right, I don't know if I should throw this in. I'm kind of looking at the time. Well, you know, one thing I wish I could do, I wish I was like that Joanna Gaines lady who, you know, she just like walks into the house and she just like will walk through and she'll say, okay, if we just knock out this wall, we're going to do this, and it's going to bring $30,000 worth of extra value to the home. I am not that girl. I struggle with that stuff. And so I'm not sure if you're aware, but you actually get through the National Association of Realtors a tool that is becoming very widely used right now by many investors. This tool is called the Hanley Woods model, and I don't know if anyone's ever used it, and you certainly don't have to do this. I just really struggle here, and I thought if it helps one person, then that's a great thing. When I started designing the outline for these classes, I wanted to put in things that I struggled with as an agent, and this was one of them. When you're trying to figure out, let's say that your home is the only home in the neighborhood that does not have a garage or isn't built on a basement, or all the other ones have been remodeled and yours hasn't. How do you figure out what that tangible value is? I always really struggled with that. Like, how do I tell the homeowner, okay, I can't get you 190 that they all got because there's a garage and the garage is worth value, right? I was never good at algebra either, so that probably is just another factor. I never could figure out what X was. So when I started teaching at the MLS, somebody said, you should check out that Hanley Woods model. And I started looking and I thought, oh my gosh, it teaches you what X is, and it's location or parcel based. You don't have to do this. It's just totally optional, but it has helped me many times when I could not figure out what value is. So here's how it works. And again, it's totally optional. It is not a tool you get through My Real Source. It is a tool you get through the National Association of Realtors. So let me just start off by saying that. We did put a link to this tool right in your resources, because I want you to think of resources as like your agent toolbox. So when you are looking, I'm going to show this very briefly. And again, you don't have to use this. It's just totally optional. When you go to resources, if you ever want to find out a value, and finding out a value is hard because let's face it, if they put $10,000 into a kitchen remodel in California, and they put that same $10,000 kitchen remodel into a house in Warren, whoa, that value is going to be way different, right? So it has to be parcel based. So if you go under your agent tools, you will find something called RPR. RPR stands for the Realtor Property Resource. It's a tool you get. And for me, see, I haven't been in here in a little bit. So I think I got this backwards. Let's do it. Okay. So RPR is a tool that is parcel based, and it's supposed to give agents an advantage when you're figuring out stuff like this. So it's also another great place to get a photo, as I mentioned. So if you go to your municipality search and you can't find a photo, this is a great place to check too. So I'm going to put in my property address here of 41539 Wessel. Okay, so we've got our Google walkthrough. We've got some photos here. But what I'm really looking for is the refined value and an improvement, or something that's been added or something that's not added to the home would bring. Okay, so it gives me the basic details. But if I go down here, I'm just going to pull that off so you can see a brand new one. If I go down here and I say, okay, the homeowner said that they put in $15,000 into beautiful granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. They've really, done an upscale remodel. What is this going to bring? Because you know what happens? They put $15,000 in. You come to list the house, and they say, well, we think it should bring another $100,000 worth of value to this house. Look at this kitchen. How do you show on paper that's not really the case? Because let's face it, if you say, well, I know you think that, but unfortunately you're wrong. It doesn't work like that. You are the bad guy, right? The agent is now the bad guy. Don't be the bad guy. Do what Floyd Wickman says and always show them everything on paper. So here's a way you're going to do that. You're just going to go to under refined value. You can go to so we'll use the kitchen. That's a good one. We'll do, major kitchen remodel upscale. When you say upscale, everybody's upscale could be different, right? So it kind of gives you a rough outline of what that would be. Now, the older the repair or remodel, the less it's going to be worth, right? So if they did it, and we'll say pretty recently, April of 22, they put $15,000 into it. When I type that in right here, I can create a positive or negative adjustment. It tells me that $15,000 kitchen remodel is actually worth around $7,000. I can print off this report and add it to my cloud CMA. That way, I'm not the bad guy. I'm not the agent saying, no, your work isn't worth that, because of course that's not gonna go over well. You can actually have a real tool that is parcel based, that is going to show them that might not be the case where they're going to get $100,000 worth of value. So keep in mind, there's a whole bunch of improvements and things to choose from in this drop down. There's other areas you can add in too, but it's a good place to start. And again, it's free for you as a National Association of Realtor member, so don't be afraid to use the RPR tool for that. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Back to our CMA. All right, so we've got if we had an adjustment that we wanted to add in here, there is an area for adjusted price. You can do a positive or negative. So if I'm doing a kitchen remodel, well, that's going to be a positive. If I'm going to do a no garage, I'm just going to put a negative value next to that. So I'm going to do a negative 5,000 for that one and then save it. So hopefully you get the idea. Don't be afraid to drag and drop these into the order that you want. Sometimes it's kind of killing them softly with the news, not opening to the very strong, or comp that is really, really low and may insult them. So you can actually drag and drop those into the order you want. If you need more detail, just click on that notes and adjustment. There is a place, of course, you can put your own suggested list price. You can even do a price range. So according to this, it says my average is 256. Maybe I'm going to say we should do 250. We could list anywhere from 250 to 260. And I could type that in. There is also that net sheet. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I do mine in zip form and I bring it in because this is a lot more work. You have to name each one and do the math. You can save the names, but you still got to do all the math. It didn't really make sense to me. So again, I prefer zip form for that. All right, then lastly, you've done all the hard work. You selected all the listings. I know I'm going through this kind of in a long fashion, but on average, you're looking at about 10 minutes. Mine takes between 7 and 9 generally. Here's where you can choose what you want in your report. So everything in this white column that says your CMA report, this is everything that's going to be included right down here. Everything additional that you could add, like your cover letter, what is a CMA? Anything like that that I want to add, I'm just going to click on the plus and it's going to float in. If I don't want it, I just click the minus and it floats out. There are different sections broken down, like an adjustment section. And of course, you can drag and drop them into whatever order you want. When it comes to the comps themselves, you can also add one photo, a dozen photos, or all photos. Once you've selected what you want to be in your report, and by the way, if you don't know what a particular item is, you can click on the name of the form and it's going to show you a preview of that form. Once you've got all the forms that you want, I recommend saving a template. So all you're going to do is you're going to go to this template, give it a name. We're going to call this Cindy's template. We're going to hit save. Now that template is set up from here going forward. A couple things you want to make sure when you're saving your template is that you have the theme. The last thing you want to do is show up with like the Remax balloon if you work for Century 21, right? You want to make sure that you're using the right colors. I prefer the modern themes because they include your photo. If you are with Remax or Real Estate One, when you log in, you'll automatically be given their themes. They actually paid Cloud CMA a lot of money to add their custom pages in, so it's very cool. How do you want your comps laid out? If you want a smaller report, you may want your comps stacked up in this fashion. If you I like the photo with max data. That's the one I showed you before with all the great photos, all the details. I like that the best. I recommend never changing the font. I have seen people change this in the past and it's kind of done some goofy stuff. So I prefer just leaving the default font because I've seen it kind of make the numbers skewed a little bit where they don't line up and it just doesn't look as nice. So keeping this as the original font is suggested. Lastly, once you've got all your pages in, you hit publish report. It's that simple. Now, of course, you just have to decide, do you want to show that in an interactive way, meaning that you can make changes in that interactive style? Do you want to show it in a PDF version where you can save it? Do you want to simply email your report? So once you've made your report, it takes about 30 seconds for the report to be published. You just choose, do you want to show it in that live interactive version or that PDF version? So if I click on the PDF version, you are going to see it opens up with my nice cover. See, we cut that date off. If you want to do the live version, very similar. All you're going to do, let me pop that one back up here for you. All you're going to do is click on View Live. And you're going to have that same interactive screen that I showed you before that you can go ahead and walk through and see the comps. All right, so hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, now would be a great time to throw those in. I did want to point out that I threw a lot at you, and I know that, and I apologize. It's a lot to kind of bring into the class. If you're kind of like, oof, my head is spinning, or if you had to step away to maybe take a call, hopefully to like bottom line an offer, we did record this class. And so you're going to be able to see it at our YouTube channel. And I actually made UPart its own playlist. I think it just finished uploading the last 2 classes. I think they were done this morning. And so you can go back and you can watch this class at any time. Let me show you how to get there, because that's really the number one question is, how do you get there? If you go under resources, you will find under the education section, recorded webinars. If you click that recorded webinar button, it'll take you to our YouTube page. But I don't want you to have to go through hundreds of videos that you don't need. So you can simply click on the playlists as you see them here. And there is a Upper Peninsula Association of Realtor playlist. And matter of fact, you can see that there is 21 classes in there right now, and it will have the date next to it. I should actually organize these so yesterday's classes pop up at the top. Maybe I can do some pinning so that the most recents pop up. Anyway, long story short, when you are looking for the class list, actually maybe it does. I guess it kind of did. When you're looking for the class list, just look for the date next to the right of the class. And then you can watch it. You can fast forward maybe the point that you missed. I prefer videos. I think that's the easiest way. However, if you'd rather have a checklist or something that you can tangibly read or save for next time, under your MLS documents here, you also have an education folder that says handouts and cheat sheets. So if you click on education, if you want to find the one for, let's say, Cloud CMA, just type in the word cloud. As soon as you type in the word Cloud CMA, it'll give you the options. You can simply click on the subject you're looking for with cloud. It'll create a PDF cheat sheet for you. All you have to do is open up that cheat sheet, and it will show you step by step. Let me pop it up here. Step by step, exactly where you click to create that particular item in cloud. We are going to be covering the lead generation tool in cloud in our afternoon class. If you're available at 1 o'clock, we still have some, you can still register right through Paragon on that messaging. And we're going to go over a bunch of things, the buyer tour, some things that are hidden in Cloud CMA, like how to add custom pages. We're also going to go into more detail on the lead generation, adding in your themes, more things that's a little more detailed in setting up your cloud. So hopefully you found this class helpful. There will be a brief survey that's sent out afterward that would just let us know if you enjoyed the class, if we answered all of your questions, or if there's something maybe that we missed. Again, I know it's kind of a lot to put in the class, so hopefully you picked up a couple quick tips. The biggest takeaway from the class is once you're in Paragon and you have selected the comps that you want to use, but that's the hardest part, is finding the like comps. From there, click your actions button, Cloud CMA, and that will launch you into that very helpful CMA wizard, if you will, walking you through step by step. All right, well, I don't see any questions as of now. Want to thank you for your time today. Let me check one more time. Nope, no more questions. So thanks so much for your time today. I hope you go list a lot of properties because we need them. Our inventory seems to be extremely low still, but happy selling, everybody. I hope to see you this afternoon at 1. Have a great day.